Greetings, I'm Gibson, and today we're checking out the Saitek X-55 Rhino. Alright, so let's get this baby unboxed here. Now, the X-55 Rhino, which is made by Saitek, which was also taken over by Mad Catz. And this is a HOTAS, which is hands on throttle and stick. Alright, I got this on Amazon, just regular Amazon this time, not Amazon Japan, because they're having a sale, and I picked it up for 160 bucks. Alright, so on the inside here, just got, what is this? Some instruction pamphlets. Not too interesting. And here we got the actual packaging. Now I do have the Thrustmaster Warthog, and if you saw that video, you probably remember how heavy I said it was. And this is supposed to be very much like the Warthog, but this is not as heavy whatsoever. The Warthog I was really struggling to pick up. But this one, nice and light, which probably isn't great because that means it's going to be, you know, a lot of cheap plastic instead of the nice metal. But alright, so let's get everything out here. Alright, so let's start with this. Okay, this looks like the base for the joystick. Yep, pretty light. So, I mean, that's nice for carrying around if you gotta move around. Alright, so it looks like the joystick is just going to plug into here. And we've got a USB sticking out the back, and each piece is going to have its own USB port. And this feels a lot tighter than the X-52 Pro. Just kind of messing with it right here. I mean, we'll see how it feels once we get the stick on. But I can already see on the inside, it's built just like the X-52, where it's a ball on the inside and then this plate covering it with a spring, which offers the resistance. Okay, so for the next piece, oh, here we go, the joystick. Might as well pull that out next. Here we go. Okay, so it's taped at the top here. So you can see the connectors on the bottom here that's going to connect to the base. Alright, again, this feels so light compared to the Warthog. Whew. Alright, so we got our primary trigger. Feels like it's got a single activation, not a dual activation like the X-52 Pro, and the Warthog also has a dual activation. It's got a button on the side, just like the Warthog. It's got a four-way hat. Or is it a four-way hat? It might not be a four-way hat. I don't feel it moving. It might just be an activation. And that's going to be a big difference. Alright, so we do have a four-way hat here, here, and here. And this is probably going to be a secondary trigger here. And on the back, we've got two more triggers. One down here and one here. So my initial thoughts here, it's very clicky, but it doesn't feel very strong. Ooh, that kind of worries me a little bit compared to the Warthog, because that thing is a beast. Alright, so it looks like this is going to be the last piece, which is the thruster. Now, if you flight sim guys are watching, I'm sorry if I get the terms wrong. I'm not a flight sim kind of guy, so I don't know if this is called a thruster pack, thruster module, or just thruster. Alright, and here it is. Again, a lot like the Warthog, but maybe fewer buttons. And this has a tension tightener. You can adjust the tension on the throttle. This is dual throttle, Now I'm going to be mostly playing Elite Dangerous, so I'm not going to be using a dual throttle on that, but the X-55 does have a dual throttle, and I'm sure there's a way to lock them together. Oh, there we go. So there's a little button here on the side that locks the throttles together so it moves as one unit. Okay, so besides that, we got a spin dial here. We've got some buttons on the side here as well. Looks like we've got an up and down, 2 single press buttons. And on the top here, this one spins and has a button as well. This feels like a slider, but it does click. And we got another spinner, another button. And we got a lot more little buttons down here. Got one, oh, this one's a hat, good to know. This one is also a hat, good to know. And this is like a little mouse nub. All right, so on the bottom of the actual thruster here, looks like we've got a mode switch. Again, I don't know, I don't think that's going to apply to Elite Dangerous, but. And so it looks like we've got up, down switches, but they don't lock into place. They just go back to neutral, which is actually probably good for Elite Dangerous because not a lot of controls have a toggle option. A lot of them are either, it's just pretty much push only. So that's actually going to work out maybe better than the Thrustmaster. And we've got some dials here. Not a whole lot of tension, I don't feel any clicking. And again, some more buttons that don't exactly toggle, they go back to neutral. And of course, USB. Looks like the last thing in the box here is some extra springs. So what it actually does is it comes with different tension springs that you can switch out on the stick to give you a higher or lower resistance. So that's interesting. The Warthog did not come with that, and the X-52 Pro also did not come with that, so that's an interesting addition. Okay, and while we're at it, let's go ahead and install the flight stick onto the base here. Alright, so let's see if I can figure this out. So it looks like it's supposed to go on, and then, woo! Almost lost it. Okay, so this looks like it's supposed to go on, and then it's got like a little screw on the bottom that looks like it's going to secure it into place. There. So secured into place. All right, now let's see how it feels. It feels a lot like how the X-52 felt when it was brand new. So hopefully it stays this way. We'll see. All right, so we got them putting together here. We're pretty much good to go. Now, before we install it on the computer, we're going to do a quick comparison to the X-52 Pro and the Warthog, see what kind of differences we can spot. Okay, so here is our 3 different flight sticks, and we're going to take a look at them in order of price, highest to lowest. All right, so first, of course, that is going to be the Warthog. This thing is a beast. It costs about $400, and I'm going to try to stay out of the frame as much as I can here. All right, so this is the Warthog right here. So I'm going to kind of describe how it feels a little bit. The Warthog has a very, very smooth throttle. That's one thing I'm really happy with. It does have a little bit more tension than I was used to after using the X-52 Pro, but I gotta say I really like using it now. The buttons on it are very clicky. You can feel that they're well made, and yeah, you can feel that it's a quality flight stick. The only thing that this doesn't have that I would have liked, but I understand because it's supposed to be a replica of the A10, but it does not have a twist for yaw, which is a little unfortunate, but I understand you got to use pedals if you want to use yaw, or figure out a different kind of yaw solution for it. Okay, so the next up is the X-55, which is of course right here, which we just unboxed. This one feels a lot like the X-52. It's got plasticky buttons, but they are nice and clicky, but you can definitely feel that this thing is made out of plastic. There's no denying that. But this does have the twist stick for yaw, so that is a plus in my book if you don't feel like using pedals. So what's cool here is they look almost identical. This has got the 3 hats, the Warthog has the 3 hats, the buttons are the same. On the Warthog here, it's an actual hat here, where on the X-55 it's a button. The Warthog trigger is dual stage, where the X-55 feels like a single stage, but the rest of the buttons are pretty much the same, except for how they feel. The Warthog feels amazing. The X-55 feels like definitely a cheaper version, but it does got that yaw. Man, that's some good yaw. Alright, and lastly, the X-52 Pro. This also has the twist yaw. This is actually what the stick is based off in Elite Dangerous. So when you do see it in game, it looks a lot like this. It's got a 4-way hat here, a 4-way hat here, and then buttons. And then this is like the safety switch used to engage your hard points. On the back side, it's got a trigger on the bottom, a trigger on the top, which is a dual stage if you like that kind of thing. And it also has some buttons on the bottom here that you can toggle. And in Elite Dangerous, you're pretty much using all the buttons, and I wish I had more. Alright, so that is a look at the 3 main sticks. Minus the CH products. I would love to try out some CH products, but they're very hard to get here in Japan without spending way too much money. Alright, so let's take a look at the thrusters. Okay, so again, we're going to go in order of price, highest to lowest. So of course that means starting out with the Warthog. Okay, here's the Warthog right here. Now this also does have the dual thrusters, which is not used in Elite Dangerous, but it is an option if you're doing like a DCS or say Arma or something like that. So you can separate it, and it's got a little metal thing here on the back to attach it together. Now this one has so many buttons, it's ridiculous, because it's supposed to be used with like the A10 DCS game, or you can use it for like Arma. So it's more of like a simulation thing here. So all the switches here are tough. You know, they're tough switches. They actually toggle. They take some pressure to activate. And it's got a very long and smooth throttle, which is good. And it's just got a lot more buttons. Now a lot of these buttons you're not actually going to use on Elite Dangerous, because a lot of them are toggles, and there's not actually a lot of toggle controls that you can set. So you're not going to get as much use of all the buttons here, but it's got tons. I mean, it's got a 4-way hat on the back here, another 4-way hat, which in the form of like a nub. Think like the old ThinkPads, the little mouse nub in the middle of the keyboard. It's got on the back, and of course it's got another 4-way. This has got a toggle and a button, and this is a dual toggle here, and another dual. Let's see, another dual toggle. So dual toggles down here, and we'll switch on the side. Yeah, so lots of buttons, but for Elite Dangerous, you're not going to use the majority of them because they're all toggle, unfortunately. All right, so moving over to the X-55. So you can see it's, like I showed you before, it's got the dual throttle. So this is smooth, but it's definitely not as far of a travel, which could go either way. It's really personal opinion on what you like more. It's got a lot less buttons on here, but the buttons that they do have don't toggle, so you can use a lot more of them in game because it goes back to a neutral position. And it's got the rotating switches top and bottom, and they're also buttons. It's got a slider with buttons. It's got not a 4-way, but a 2-way hat on the back. and some more buttons on the back, more toggles. So it's like the Warthog Lite, but possibly more functional in Elite Dangerous, but definitely not up to the same quality standards, I would say, as the Warthog. And at the back we've got the X-52 Pro. Now this also has a fairly smooth throttle. Now you may or may not know, but they do have like a little magnetic bump in here that will catch it at like 75 and then you can push it on to 100. Mine actually broke, so that was having some real problems here. So I actually had to disassemble it and pull out that little bump that would cause the issues. So now there's no bump there, so it's nice, smooth. I know some people do that on purpose, even if it is functional, and that's fine. It's all personal preference. Now this does have a multifunctional display, which is different from the Warthog and the X-55. I do not use it for anything really, except for maybe if I'm trading and I want to time a route. It's got like a stopwatch and stuff like that, and it'll tell you what button you're pushing, but it's not really something I use. But this too has a spinning knob here with a button on top, spinning button, another button, but this broke on me. That button does not work anymore for some reason. And we've got a 4-way hat on the back and a slider here, the mouse button, and like a right mouse click. So a lot less buttons, but I would say the multifunctional display might not be worth it unless you really want that display, I guess. So these are the thrusters. Okay, so now I'm just going to show you where it is on my setup here real quick. So this is where I'm going to be testing it. This is my computer. Yay. Okay, so here is the thruster. As you can see, all those pretty green lights now that is plugged in. And it just happens to match my keyboard. Happy coincidence. Alright, so you can see it's all nice and green here. It's got a multi-function switch here. It looks like it goes down into 3 different memory modes. So those lights change. And on the opposite side with the flight stick, here it is. And it's kind of hard to see with the lights on here, but you see a little bit of a green glow coming from behind the buttons. Very subtle, but it's nice. And no other lights on the thruster. And this has nothing to do with the joystick, but this is my ED head tracker that I connect to my headphones for when I want to move my head around in game. And usually this is where I use my Warthog flight control system, so here are my pedals that I use for that. Again, that has nothing to do with this stick, because it has yaw that you can use, though you can use the flight stick if you want to, or I mean the pedals if you want to. So, yep, that's how it looks, all set up nicely. Okay, so I've installed the X-55 Rhino, installed the drivers, and got to spend a little bit of time in Elite Dangerous. And here's how my experience has been so far. So installing it was not a big problem. I learned my lesson from the X-52 and downloaded the drivers first. I installed the drivers and waited until it asked for me to plug in the stick and the throttle before actually plugging it into the computer. And I didn't run into any problems installing. There was one little quirk where it kind of froze up towards the end, and I restarted the installer and everything was fine after that. So that's good news on the installer. It looks like it worked fine with USB 3.0, where the X-52 Pro had a little bit of an issue with the 3.0. Okay, now on to my experience with Elite Dangerous. I went into the training area because I didn't want to run into any problems with my actual ships, and lo and behold, I did run into some problems. The first one being ghost buttons. This is something, if you've researched the X-55 before, you've heard about ghost button presses. So that's basically where it's going to be pressing buttons for you even though you're not activating them. I've seen a lot of responses being you should plug it into a powered external USB hub and then into your computer, and that fixed the issue. And that's exactly what I did. I plugged it into an external USB hub, and that's where I had the problems actually. Now this could just be my setup, I don't know. But I plugged them both into the hub and I had all kinds of ghosting problems. I had silent running activating, I had my landing gear coming up and down. It was just tons of problems. It wasn't just now and then. It was fairly often to the point where I had to just quit it and start some troubleshooting. Now once I plugged it directly into the computer, all the problems went away. There was no more ghost button presses. And I played for just about an hour to make sure I wasn't getting any, and none happened. And I stayed in the training module the whole time. So that's something to keep in mind, and it does have me a little bit wary about actually playing with my own chips, because that's the last thing you want, really, is a bunch of button pressing happening when you don't intend it. So that is something to watch out for. Now the aesthetics of using the X-55 Rhino, it feels pretty good, it looks good, it definitely doesn't look as hardcore as say the Thrustmaster Warthog, but it does look really good, so it's good showmanship, definitely. And it feels pretty good to use. It feels a lot like the X-52, where the construction is plasticky and the buttons are clicky, but they don't feel real solid. Now with the Thrustmaster Warthog, all the buttons are very solid and clicky, and it feels like you're using something of a high quality. I have heard criticisms about the internals of the Thrustmaster Warthog, where it's the same kind of plastic construction on the inside, but hopefully it's more protected because of the stronger build quality on the outside, using all of the metals and the solid switches. So the X-55 here, it was pretty good. I think I'm going to like using it over the X-52, as it has a lot more buttons and it feels maybe a little bit better of a product. Mapping the buttons was not a problem. I didn't use the X-55 software at all. For Elite Dangerous, that's really not necessary. In Elite Dangerous, you can just go into the menu and map all the buttons to the different controls you want, and you can use all kinds of different devices and still map whatever you want from each device to each action. So mapping was a cinch. I was done in about 15 minutes and had everything set up the way that I wanted. Alright, so bottom line, it feels like a good product. I enjoyed using it. I think I will enjoy using it more than the X-52 Pro. In fact, I purchased it to replace the X-52 that I use downstairs in the living room on my laptop. And I will continue to use the Thrustmaster Warthog upstairs on my main battle station here. Is it worth it for you? That's going to be a tougher question. It all depends on how much you're willing to pay. The X-52 Pro, when I purchased it, was $142, and when I purchased the X-55, it was $160. So for $20 more, if that's what if you're looking at the X-52, if you can spend $20 more and get the X-55, I would say go for it. There is some question about build quality and ghost buttons, but to be honest with you, they're made by the same people, and I think they're going to have a lot of the same problems. And the X-52 hasn't been bulletproof in my experience either. And is it something to get instead of the Thrustmaster Warthog? Well, you can get a lot of the same buttons and it's got the same form factor for the most part, but it's definitely not the same. If you want a real quality, high-grade HOTAS, I would still go with the Thrustmaster Warthog. Alright, thanks for watching everybody, and please stay tuned for more Elite Dangerous videos, weekly collectibles, and more toy reviews. So please subscribe and let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you thought in the comments. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to see all of my latest videos.